Hello everybody, my name is Zeke and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a video about winter book recommendations. Now, I know it's already the end of February and winter is coming to a close soon. Around where I've been, it's been very warm recently. That hasn't felt very wintry, but over the last few days it started to get cold again, and that's made me think about books I could be reading or books I've read that have really reminded me of winter. And so I thought I'd do a quick recommendation video about winter books and books I think really feel like winter or they remind me of winter in some way. So I'll give the list, I'll talk about each of them a little, I'll say why I think they're good winter recommendations, and then I hope you read them. Okay, so first off, I want to talk about a book I actually read very recently and talked about very recently, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is the first novel in a fantasy series. I've only read the first one, but it's a trilogy, and it's set in the Russian wilderness, and we follow this young girl, we follow her family as the father is getting a new wife, and things are changing around their village for various reasons, and the wife does not believe in sort of the old traditions, and she's more focused on Christianity, and she has her own issues that kind of force her into that position, while the daughter has more magical abilities, magical presence, based in older traditions, and that comes from her mother's side, and her mother has obviously passed away as her father's getting a new wife. And what makes this a very good winter book is the atmosphere. So this book takes place in winter. It's very connected to the winter. We get lots of discussion of winter in nature and just cold, and it's very all-encompassing. The winter setting of this book is very important to the whole story. So I feel like it's a very good fantasy book recommendation because there are obviously lots of fantasy stories that have winter or snowy areas or whatever, but this book really centers on that, and you can really feel it throughout the whole book, and I would highly recommend. Next, I want to talk about Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica. Probably pronounced that wrong, forgive me. But this is a short horror-ish, literary-ish novel that focuses on a world where meat is no longer edible to humans, and so they turn to cannibalism, but kind of an organized cannibalism, a kind of institutionalized and kind of like corporation-focused, processed version of cannibalism that's honestly incredibly creepy and incredibly scary to read about and gross to read about. But I feel like that kind of dread that fills this novel because of its subject matter really feels like something that makes sense to read in winter. It's very depressing, it's very dark, and I feel like it's very gloomy in general, and its depiction of humanity and what humanity can become. And I think everything in that novel shows that, especially the ending. The ending is incredible, at least to me. I think it really sums up the essence of the whole novel, and it's a very, as I said, dark and disturbing read, but I'd highly recommend, especially if you're looking for something to read in winter that's kind of more depressing and darker and disturbing in some way. I know it's pretty popular right now, but I cannot recommend it enough. It's incredible. Okay, moving on. The next two books are both dark academia, which I personally, and I think a lot of people, really associate with winter just because of those darker, like studious energy, atmosphere, being at school, and a lot of them actually take place in winter or have like large sections that take place in winter that are important to the story, which is definitely the case with the first one I'm going to talk about, which is incredibly popular, but The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I think this is the essential dark academia book, and we follow these students. They're studying classics, because of course, and they're very pretentious, and you kind of hate all of them, but you see all their relationships, and it focuses on the murder of one of them. And we have a main character, but we kind of learn a lot about all the characters, and it all kind of, it's very slow, but it builds to an incredible conclusion, and we just get so much insight into how incredibly disgusting some of these characters are, and how they're how messed up everything kind of gets. And it's a very interesting book to read. It's very slow, but very atmospheric, and there is a large portion of the book that takes place in winter that I feel like really sums up a lot of what the book is about. So I think it's a really good book to read in winter for that reason, and it's also just really good. Next up is Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. This is a translated work, and I probably pronounced the author's names wrong, so sorry. And this is the first in a series. The rest of the series hasn't been translated to English yet, but the second book will be this year, coming out in English, so can't wait to read that. And this is another Dark Academia, but this is more speculative, and this is an incredibly strange and weird book. And there's some magical realism, there's some magic, and we follow this girl as she's just going on with her normal everyday life. She's on vacation with her mom, and suddenly there's this weird man who keeps popping up around, and he kind of forces her to perform very strange and magical and abnormal tasks. And she's threatened with various things if she doesn't do them. So she ends up doing them, and she eventually ends up at a special school. And we see her navigate through the school. We see all the weird stuff that's going on at this school. And there's magic involved, there's some horror elements, and it's really dark as well. I feel like Dark Academia, obviously, but also just the things that happen in this book, they just have such a weird presence and such a weird air to them that I think really make it feel wintry in some ways. And I think it's a good book to read in winter because of that atmosphere and that darkness. And it's also just a really unique book, and I think that more people should read it because it's really good and like very different from a lot of other Dark Academia or speculative fiction that's out there. So read it, and read it in the winter. Lastly, I want to talk about The Stranger by Albert Camus. This is a classic and short, and I think it's a very deep examination of what it means to be a bad person, what it means to be a criminal. We follow this man, and it's too short it's not really something I want to give a synopsis for. It's something you should just read, but it's, I think, less than 200 pages, and I think just, once again, the depressing nature of it and the kind of deep character analysis of it makes it feel very wintry. This is kind of an honorable mention, but I just think it's a good option if you're just looking for something that's more of a classic that you want to read. And it's also, as I said, very short, so you can get through it. And it actually was not my favorite at all, but I think the kind of message that you get out of it is really interesting to think about. And I think personally I liked it, but the reason I didn't love it wasn't the fault of the book. It was more just me not really reading it in a literary analysis way, just kind of reading it for pleasure and being like, okay, that's the book. But I think there's a lot to get out of it if you really want to read it that way. And I think also it's just a very winter book. It's something you could sit down on a cold day inside and just read it in a day and get a lot out of. So that's why it's in this recommendation. I think those 5, that's gonna do it. If you want to pick them up, please do. I think they're all very good for the end of winter, the last few weeks. Before winter ends, you can read maybe one of these if you want. And I think they're all good choices, and they all will really fit with the winter atmosphere if that is something that you enjoy trying to do while you're reading. So thank you for watching this video. Please like and comment if you want. Subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future, and I'll see you next time.